I want everyone to dance. And I want you to film it, and I want you to send it to me, and I'd like to make a compilation of dancing videos. But that's a dream for another day. With an induction, I want to walk you through what to expect when you go in. And this is specific to my hospital or that I have worked at, but I think this is going to be generally what you're going to be seeing, especially if you're having an induction in a hospital setting. So you're going to go in, you're going to register where you give them your photo ID, you give them your insurance card, they ask you some questions, they get you all figured out. The nurse is going to come in, she is going to go over your medical history with you, and she is going to start an IV and draw some labs and get baby on the monitor. We're never going to do anything to baby without making sure that baby is already in a good, healthy, safe spot. So monitoring is going to be important. Then the doctor is going to come in. He's going to discuss with you induction options, what we're doing, why we're doing it, probably expanding on things that you've already talked about in the office. He is going to have you sign a consent form for the induction, probably have you sign a consent form for blood as well, and just in the off chance that there's an emergency and you need a blood transfusion, we always kind of have those two signed together just to have them out of the way. Then he or she is going to do whatever induction-y process they were planning on. That might be placing that Cervidil or that Cytotec vaginally. It might be doing a membrane sweep at that time as well. It might be inserting that Foley bulb, or it might be putting in the orders for Pitocin. The nurse would start the Pitocin. Whatever means of induction we are planning on doing, we will go ahead and get started. And then often you will be monitored. With the Pitocin, you're monitored continuously. Sometimes with the other medications, you aren't monitored continuously, but you will have some monitoring initially after placement. It's all going to depend on the hospital's policy and procedure, which is a good thing to ask your doctor when you're going in before you get induced. Like, hey, like, what is monitoring going to look like if I'm getting induced? What are my options for induction? What do you recommend? And having those conversations before you go in kind of will get your headset in the space where it needs to be to know what's going to be happening to you. Having a baby by induction can take a while. It just can. Especially if it's your first baby. So some really key things that I want you to remember when you are going in for your induction are: it's okay to rest and relax at times. I don't want you sitting in the bed all day, but take some moments to relax. Take a warm shower, rest your eyes for a little nap, you know, do things that are kind of smart relaxing. So sitting on a birthing ball and moving around that way versus walking in the halls 24/7. You are going to need to still have some energy at the end to push out a baby. It's also important to know whether or not you're going to be allowed to eat during your induction process. I think really we know that we should be letting women eat during early labor or early in the induction process, especially at our hospital. Sometimes we have moms, it's a 2-3 day process of the induction, and we aren't going to keep her from eating for 2 to 3 days. That's ridiculous. She needs to have strength and energy, and her cells need glucose to properly work. Her uterus needs nutrients to contract. That's just, it is what it is. So we do a lot of light eating, light snacking. I wouldn't have a cheeseburger. A lot of like bagels with a fruit plate is great. Maybe something a little bit less carby if you do have the gestational diabetes, but good proteins. Eating is really important when you are early in your induction, especially if this is going to be a process that takes a few days. If for some reason your hospital does not allow you to eat at all once you step in those doors, and that's a conversation that you need to have with your doctor, making sure that before you go in for your scheduled induction, you have a really nice big meal and have a nice big full warm tummy. Because you need carbs and you need protein and you need fat to fuel your body to do this marathon. We don't expect marathon runners to not eat for 3 days before they run their marathon. That would be absolutely ridiculous. So mothers need to eat, and they need to relax, and they need to take care of their body early in the induction process, because things are going to pick up and get kind of crazy, and then we're gonna have babies. So take care of yourself. So we've talked a little bit about, especially for a first-time mom, that inductions can take a little while, that it might be, you know, 2 to 3 days. And it's not that you're in active hard labor for 2 to 3 days, it's that we're trying to get you into labor. And that's the part that takes the longest with an induction for most women. And so I think one thing to really, really keep in mind, you're going to be checked to see if whatever they're doing to induce you is working. Do not be discouraged if your cervix has not changed, especially if we're using some of those cervical ripening agents like that I talked about earlier on, because here are the things I am looking for. If your cervix changes, yay, I'm so happy, that's awesome. But really what I want to see is your baby come down lower. I would like to see your cervix come forward, and I would like to see your cervix thin out more than I would like to see your cervix change with those kind of early induction ripening techniques that we're going to be using. Especially if you're not super uncomfortable, don't be surprised and don't be discouraged if you are 1 centimeter for 3 checks in a row until we move on to something else, because it is not all about cervical dilation. It is about baby's position. It is about baby's station. It is about the thinness of your cervix. And those things are really important to change, and sometimes changes those things just a little bit when we do start the Pitocin, or we do break your water, or labor does kick in naturally. It moves a lot faster because we've kind of gotten all those other things out of the way, those kind of pre-labor things that we are maybe having to manually medically manipulate because we are telling your body to have a baby when your body wasn't quite ready yet to have the baby. SMART is going to be important because we want baby to be in an optimal position when labor is progressing. That's going to help labor progress more smoothly. It's going to help hopefully you not have back labor. So definitely a lot of like leaning forward when you're resting, not sitting back like this, right? Because baby's going to go to gravity. The heaviest part is going to go to gravity, and that could mean that baby is malpositioned, sunny side up, asynclitic, things of that nature. So resting smart is important. Also, you are going to be up and moving some, and we want you to be up and moving some. And so what it's really important to do is keep your hips asymmetrical. So really, really big when you're on that birthing ball, figure 8 movements. And I want you, once you are done with your monitoring, or even if they let you get up and you're on telemetry monitoring, I want you to dance. I want you to dance for 45 minutes after you have gotten any sort of change to your induction process. I want you to keep those hips asymmetrical. I want you to turn on some music, and I want you to dance, because that is going to help get baby in a really, really good position. And the best position. What we want to do is make sure that we are making room where baby needs to go, so that baby will go where they are going. Babies go where there is room. And so our goal is to make sure that there is room in the appropriate places. While I said that you do need to rest, and you do, I really also, when you're resting, rest smart. So on a birthing ball, lying on one side and then the other, sitting all the way upright. Try and avoid positions where your knees are above your bottom, even duck walking, or walking on a curb, or doing stairs, things of that nature that keep your keep your hips changing. Even, you know, like lunges in the hallway when you're walking. I'm a really big fan, and this is all like you're not really having contractions at this point. A lot of places will have like squat bars, and using those too. And squatting down when you're having contractions. Just keep moving, 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 moving. That is going to be the most important thing, because we want baby to be in the very best position possible for him or her to be born. There are a few risks with induction, just like any medical procedure. But in a controlled environment with attentive nurses and doctors, your risks are going to be well managed. So the big risks with induction, obviously we have a risk of needing a C-section. Out of all the first-time moms who go in to get induced, about 25% of them end up needing a C-section, which means about 75% deliver vaginally with no problem. And they might need a C-section for a myriad of reasons. So they might need it for if you've stopped dilating, the baby stopped descending at any point, or if the baby is not tolerating labor. Now, for some of the reasons why we're doing inductions, we already know that baby is compromised, so it might not be that the induction is really causing the issue, but just that labor would have caused this issue too. Like for example, if baby has intrauterine growth restriction, we know that they're not getting quite as much from the placenta as they would really ideally be getting, which is why their growth is restricted, which is why we're inducing you. So other things that can be an issue, obviously having too many contractions, which can cause that distress of the baby, a uterine rupture, which typically would only happen if you had prior C-section or surgery on your uterus, and in which case you're probably not eligible for an induction, but very, very, very rarely on somebody who's neither had surgery of any kind or a C-section, a uterine rupture is possible. We've talked about that cord prolapse, which can happen when you're breaking the water. We've also talked about infection being introduced with having your water broken and labor taking a little bit longer. So here's the thing. A lot of people were like, my induction was so much worse than natural labor. The pain was worse. I felt like I needed an epidural. Yes and no. So strong regular contractions are going to be needed to have a baby vaginally. And the Pitocin sometimes brings those contractions on a little bit sooner, but eventually they would have been that intense. But getting an epidural is not a cop-out. It's not a failure. It is a tool in our toolbox to help us have a happy and healthy and safe delivery. And so if you are medically needing an induction for whatever reason, and you do need an epidural, because sometimes they do take a long time and you are tired, and that is okay, you are more likely to get an epidural with an induction than you are with a going into labor naturally. But that's not a reason to not get an induction if it is medically indicated for you to get an induction, because we are looking at the risks and the benefits of inducing, and sometimes that is mom and or baby. The very last thing we would like you to know about inductions is that you got this. You can do it. It's a long haul sometimes it's a short haul, but just kind of go in with an open mind. Something else that I really just want you to kind of keep in mind, if you are ever feeling uncomfortable or like things are being done too aggressively to you, or people aren't explaining to you what's going on, definitely have the conversation with your doctor. Hey, I understand you want to break my water, but baby and I are doing okay right now. I'd like to think about it for 30 minutes and I will get back to you. This is your labor, and obviously the point of the labor is to have a baby, but sometimes things can be really overwhelming, and I never want you to feel like you are being inundated with information and not giving time to process. Sometimes there are medical emergencies where that does need to happen, but sometimes it's not, and having the conversation with your doctor, if baby and I are healthy and happy and safe at this exact moment, I would like a few minutes to think about this with my partner or my support person. Because you've got this. You can do this, okay? You are gonna meet your baby so soon. And that is the most exciting thing in the world. And just know, if we have birth plans or birth preferences, sometimes things don't always go as planned. Sometimes you end up needing a medical induction for your safety and the safety of your baby. And kind of rolling with the punches and trusting your healthcare providers that they know what is best for you and how to provide the best care for you, and having the conversations with your healthcare provider about your preferences and seeing what we can do to try and make things the best that they can be given the circumstances. Kind of my number one rule in parenting is parent the child you have and not the child that you wish you had. The child I have does her makeup and comes and interrupts my videos. And maybe the child that you have is having a little bit of intrauterine growth restriction and needs to be born a little bit sooner and a little bit differently than how you were hoping. But trust your providers, trust your body. We've got you and you've got this. Thanks so much for watching. Bye guys.